everyone, to another episode of the GTM and AI podcast, where we love to just bring you what's going on today, educate you, bring great people on that are showing you how they're using AI every day. And I'm super excited about my guest today, Taimoor, he's a RevOps guru. So let me tell you, I'm super excited about all the things he's doing. Him and I have been chatting for probably 6, 7, 8 months. And every time we chat, he's giving me another way he's using AI. And I'm so excited to bring that to you today. So just a little bit about Taimoor. So why should you listen? So he's a fractional RevOps leader, and the way he thinks about go-to-market, he even created a company. His company, he's the founder of the Go-to-Market OS. And the reason that I love Go-to-Market OS is I talk a lot about the go-to-market as an operating system and a system. And so not only is he doing that and building it, but he even created a company around it. So I love that. He is also the chapter co-head at the RevOps Co-op in Berlin. And he's worked in RevOps at multiple levels for many different startups at different stages. So Taimoor, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
John, thank you so much for having me. And this is exciting. This is probably one of my favorite topics, GTM and AI. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm excited.
Absolutely. And there's so many opportunities in this space. And this is what we talk about a lot. We're going through another decade long platform shift in technology with AI. But I also think, we're going through a go-to-market platform shift as well, where we had this period of time where there was growth at all costs, no interest rates. People were just, dumping a ton of money and becoming very, very inefficient. And now we've pulled back to more of a profitable and efficient growth, where the things that you're doing and the things that we're talking about are very critical. I mean, they're mission critical to be able to drive, profitable and efficient growth throughout your go-to-market system. So, so this is what the listeners want to hear. This is what they want to know how to do. So, so I'd love your take on, first let's learn a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about you, and then would love to get your take on the landscape and how you kind of see RevOps, go-to-market, and AI.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for the intro, and thank you so much for the kind words. My story is I actually started off as a salesperson. I used to be an SDR, and this is back in around 12 to 13 years ago. I used to be the SDR calling, doing cold calls, doing a lot of account research. But I found my true calling in the world of operations. I was always into data and processes. And then I think for the next, let's say, 10 years of my life, I work in operations, everything from, let's say, data process improvement. I was Salesforce admin for some time. I did marketing operations. I did CS operations. So did everything under the umbrella of RevOps, which is now RevOps. It was never called RevOps before. Previously, I also I was head of RevOps in my last full-time role, when the company went through an acquisition. So I was there from, the stage of building the whole company, setting up RevOps, got acquired, and then mergers are always interesting. So, 1 year of where, you integrate the two companies together. Then I would say a little sabbatical. I wanted, did some traveling. And then I think it was at the same time, ChatGPT came out. And I think that's where I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And timing was so perfect, right? Because I had time to actually dive into it. And I felt I had the same energy I had when I was right out of school to, I was up at night, trying to learn this, try to play around with it. And, as if I just got a new toy. And so that was super, super interesting. And I think one thing I would like to just point at that same, what you mentioned about growth at all costs to efficient growth. And if you think about the timing, the end of the ZERP era, and that's when ChatGPT got released. So they could not have timed it better, right? Which is, I do feel, let's say, this AI is a very deflationary force, right? Which is, it is the thing going to drive efficiency, is going to hopefully drive profitable growth as well. And the timing is really perfect. And when it's time, it's people for you and I to actually start looking into how can we actually use that in our, let's say, in our day-to-day jobs to actually improve that efficiency and move towards much more profitable growth. That's, I think, especially because you mentioned I wanted to raise that. Came back to my story a little bit. So while I was doing a sabbatical, I met a technical co-founder. We started playing around with, hey, let's build an enterprise level knowledge-based chatbot. right? That you can digest all your data, do it. So we were, let's say, playing around with it, building something, and then GPT got released.
Mm.
And that was the moment, when most people say, hey, ChatGPT killed my startup. I would say ChatGPT killed my motivation, because I think for me, that was a very interesting moment to think about that, hey, because this technology is changing so fast, it is very hard to build a defensible business. And what I was building at the time, I was like, it's actually a lot easier for me to just use GPTs and go to companies and then help them build their own knowledge base and use GPTs to actually do those, getting that information at the right point, at the right spot. So that's why I was like, it's not a best time to build. And since then, I've been in the more, let's say, fractional and consulting world. And like when I talk about, let's say, GTM OS, that's like, hey, we need to think about how like our go-to-markets, our motions going to change, the way we operate is going to change. And I think like that's where I think my head is at the moment. What does that future of go-to-market operating systems look like?
Love that. And it makes a ton of sense because
Mm.
you're exactly right. I mean, you think about these AI models and everything, and I mean, who has billions of dollars to build these things, right?
Yeah.
And we get the benefit. So as go-to-market leaders or as fractional leaders, or whatever, we're getting a ton of benefit. And we're able to share that with companies because the world. I sometimes have to bring myself back to reality. And there was an article or a post I saw was that anytime that you want to know if the topics that you're talking about, because our whole world is surrounded by algorithms on LinkedIn and everything else, and the people that we associate are with are in the AI space and the go-to-market space. So it's like do a Google do a Google search on trends and look for things like dinosaurs and other most common things, and then look at what you're talking about a lot and see where it ranks. And it always puts me back into, oh man, we're actually in the minority of people that are doing this, that are thinking about this, because others are not, or the vast majority are not. They're just playing around. And so the value that someone like you can bring to organizations by leveraging the power of AI and the models and the automations and things is so important today. And honestly, I see many, many companies. I mean, even Sam Altman, who created OpenAI, right? He was at Y Combinator, and so basically he heard startups and helped startups and do all these things. And I spoke with another founder last week who was the same thing. He was at AWS in their startup program, and he got the idea from all the challenges the companies were seeing. And so I think going to your story, it's very empowering because, hey, look, instead of you looking at it as something like it killed my business, you say, no, let me seize the opportunity. Let me build something to help. And then this could potentially even inform you later on what you should actually build as technology changes and the rapid adoption happens. So I love what you're doing. And I definitely appreciate that, as well as the other companies. So, well, let's get into it a little bit. So would love, so here's the thing. There's Zapier, there's Make, there's Clay, there's a lot of things. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about Clay because you use Clay a lot. But I think for the audience, it would be great to get your perspective on automation versus AI. How do you think, what are the differences and what are the combinations? Because what you are doing, and I've seen what you're doing, you're using both in the same workflow, but I don't know that people quite understand what is the difference in the two sometimes. So would you give us an example or just explain a little bit about your approach and how you think in the RevOps world or with your clients about the difference of using automation versus AI?
I think that's actually a very interesting question, right? The way I look at it is or how we were looking at automation a year ago or 2 years ago. We were thinking about rule-based, which is if then that, right? So
Yep.
which is like a good example would be lead scoring, for example. We'll always had this thing of, hey, if, for example, a customer downloads a white paper, that give them 10 more points, add 10 points to their lead score. So this was all if statements, right? It was a series of if statements, rules that we build out. That is automation for me. Now, when you look at the world of AI, the same thing of lead scoring, how you will do in a world of AI would potentially be, hey, you would write a prompt that, hey, this is what my ICP looks like. This is my ideal customers. This is who do I do. Now you, AI, tell me, how is this company a good fit, right? So it's like, hey, give it a score from 1 to 10. So it's that element of intelligence, element of reasoning, reasoning and learning. That is, I think, what AI comes into play. And I think when you put the both things together, that's where magic happens.
I love that. And it's so important. So that you very simply explained it, what a lot of people can't explain. What is the difference? And you're exactly right. It's almost like in the automation world, and I'll just repeat it and make sure that I also get it too, because I think it's great. And I'm going to steal it, by the way. But in the automation world, it was us doing the work and having to fine tune it and make the automation happen. In the world of AI, it's allowing AI to be the intelligence and the reasoning and asking it, what should we do? How should we do? And what does that look like? And allowing it to come back with the results. And so it's kind of flipped the script, if you will, on who's doing the work. And I love that point of view and perspective on that. So yeah, as we get into this, so how do you see AI transforming go-to-market, transforming RevOps, if you want to take that view? So either go-to-market, RevOps, but would love to just kind of get your perspective, because you're doing a lot of this. And then we'll get into some of the specific use cases we want to talk about. But ultimately, how do you see it today versus, 6, 12 months from now? What are you seeing that's changing in go-to-market and RevOps day to day?
So I'm maybe going to start by taking a very long-term view, right? And I do believe, let's say, it's very hard to predict what the long-term future is going to be. The companies of, let's say, 5 years, 10 years from now are going to look very different in terms of how they operate and what does the hierarchy and like the org structure looks like. And in the same sense, it's very hard to predict what RevOps would look like, even if it might exist at all, right? So that's where I think we might be heading. But in, let's say, the immediate short term, I think, so your go-to-market motions are going to change quite a bit. In terms of, the first thing is the tech stacks that we are familiar with are going to change, right? So you see a lot of new tools coming in the markets, such as Clay, Copy.ai, which embed AI into your general workflows. So that's the general trend I will see. The other thing I will see is, like, as RevOps, we would be able to operate in a lot faster, right? So an example, I think I was sharing with you that, hey, like, usually recently I did a territory building exercise, which usually used to take me weeks to do, right? Doing the whole analysis and all that. But now with ChatGPT or like as a co-pilot, it just really just cut down my time. So what that also means is that, okay, now we would be able to, because we can deliver things a lot faster, we would be able to, let's say, operate in a much more linear teams.
Yeah.
So what that means is, let's say, I do see in the next year, maybe a RevOps team might look like, maybe one head of RevOps with a few AI agents and one or two key people, rather than where you had, let's say, a team of 10 to 15. So the teams will definitely shrink. Tech stack, like I said, tech stack will shift as well. And I think the other thing would be, we'll see a consolidation of tech stack, which what I mean by that is, right now we have a tool for everything. We have a tool for every one little problem. And slowly what we're going to start seeing is, hey, a lot of these tools that we exist, we probably won't go and buy them. RevOps might be able to just build something internally really quick using no-code tools. A good example I can share, like I was talking to you about this earlier as well. Like yesterday, I was trying to do a round robin lead assignment on a very specific percentage distribution in Salesforce. It's not round robin is not possible in Salesforce in the first place, but generally you have tools like Lean Data and all those to actually help you do that, right? But I ended up building that in a Google Sheet with Clay and connecting with Google Sheet and all that. But my point is, like, I don't need to buy those tools anymore. I could actually build those things internally. And I think that's the other thing we're going to see a lot more of, is having that internal, let's say, tools as well.
Yeah, no,
but
love that.
One thing I would say is, so where does RevOps fit in? And I do feel, this is maybe my personal bias, but I do see RevOps being the best suited to actually be responsible for the adoption of AI in the go-to-market teams. And the reasons for that is they're closest to the data and tech stack. right? They understand the full funnel from marketing, sales, CS. So they understand the full funnel. They understand what their problems are. They understand the processes really well. And the other factors there are the unbiased, right? So it's, I think, and they also have, I would say, experience in buying tech as well. So that's why they're probably the most suited to uh, have enable AI within, go-to-market teams.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And in the same way today, right? That they're best suited to run the go-to-market operating system, think about the go-to-market strategy and how from traffic to churn it all fits in. Because, going to your point, I agree completely. I think, what people have to be, if you're listening or just in general, you have to be very curious right now, experimenting, learning, because ultimately, Taimoor's point, there is a world and we're already kind of seeing it. I mean, HubSpot just launched agent.ai where you can go on, you're using Clay and the agent inside of Clay. You can build a lot of these kind of using automations and AI with ChatGPT and custom GPTs and all these things. And then also Salesforce, they're calling it Agent Force now, kind of funny, but now they're launching agents. So there is a world, and I think what we have to think about, right, as people, as RevOps, or go-to-market leaders is, really diving in and understanding, because these agents will be like a digital team. They will be part of our team going forward. And that's okay with me, because ultimately, you think about all of the things, who wants to, I mean, I would love, if you're listening or Taimoor, someone, I would love to meet them, but who wakes up every day and like, man, I cannot wait to go into Salesforce or HubSpot today and update my CRM, or I cannot wait to really figure out how to build this workflow automation or fix one that's broken. Like, no one, I don't think. If you do, I'd love to meet you, but you don't wake up just loving or wanting to do that, or I want to crunch all this data and do all this data analysis and try to find the insights. Like, these are things that AI are really good and suited for, that takes us a lot of time and brain power, where we could spend that brain power on more creative solutions or getting more people executing, increasing rep productivity, really diving into the things that are important that we need to drive adoption and implementation or change management or skills up leveling, all those types of things, which is really what we're good at and what we can really spend that time on, that we're not getting to spend because we're so mundane in the admin or the workflows or things of that nature. And so I really think you've got to look at it from that perspective. And so now is the time to get curious, to learn, to experiment. And that's really what Taimoor's doing. I mean, and he's doing a lot of great things. So let's get into some of those great things. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just want to add on, like what you said right now is this. I think RevOps always get criticized of being a firefighter, right? They always, firefighting, they're not driving enough value. But I think this is also the point where now we can actually elevate ourselves, where we
I
actually,
love that.
we don't, and not firefighting all the time, answering all the tickets. But if we can figure out a way how to actually, enable the reps to help themselves, enable the teams and to, help themselves with the help of AI, and elevate ourselves so that we now have the bandwidth to actually be more and more strategic and work on the more strategic projects, which where RevOps should involve in, right? So anyone who's listening was like, you know what, I don't have time for fire, like, because I am just still doing my same firefighting job. This is the way out. This is the way to elevate and get out of firefighting.
Such a good point. And this has been the challenge, right? In RevOps. I mean, for those that are RevOps, I mean, this has really been the challenge, because it's like you want to strategically elevate yourself, but a lot of companies don't view the role or the team as a strategic team. I will tell you from personal experience. So I've been in RevOps for 8 years now. And at the last 3 companies, it was a strategic role. In fact, I sit at the table at ELT, so in our executive leadership team. And there's been a lot of work. It didn't just happen. There's been a lot of work that goes into it, because it's all about, to your point, your approach and the things that you are spending time on. Because if you're just firefighting and, FIFO, first in, first out ticket solving, and just building workflows and just building dashboards and just providing those types of things, like no one is going to come to you for advice on the go-to-market strategy or what's the next revenue stream or how should we increase rep productivity. They're just going to say, hey, can you go do this or build me that? And so I love that thought, because this has been a hot topic for many, many years of how do we elevate the role? And if we can dive into AI to allow it to take some of these tasks away from us, where we're not firefighting, and we're allowing AI to help assist us do that, or even in the future, do it for us in an autonomous way, this will allow that opportunity and we've got to seize that opportunity to strategically elevate ourselves. So that is a really, really good point. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty. So you've already mentioned two of the things we want to talk about. So so would love to, let's start with the first one. You said you built territory, territory building assignments are coming. I mean, most everyone does it at the beginning of the year. We're going through annual planning, so time's great. So would love to walk us through, share with us how you thought about building territories and doing assignments, and how the desktop app helped you with ChatGPT.
So I wish I could pull my conversations up, but I could not find it at the moment. But
Oh, that's okay.
I I guess like the way I've approached this is having, that co-pilot, like the desktop app being a co-pilot to be that person you can always bounce ideas off. And so that's the first thing, which is like you're starting off laying out a plan of, okay, this is what I'm planning to do. Does my approach make sense? And getting feedback from that ChatGPT AI to, do that back and forth to actually nail down your thought process first. So that's the first step. The second thing I think was looking at the data, right? So you can say, okay, I want to carve territories which are equal. These are the factors I want to go in. So firstly, how do you make them equal? Is to actually understand what are your ICP really well. So what I did first was took out, like with one of the companies I worked with, took out their existing customer base, and then went nitty-gritty in terms of segments, by not only by the industry label, but actually by the NAICS score. NAICS score is like in Europe, similar to you have in the US, NAICS, NAICS, similar to that, right? So it's like, okay,
Yep.
find me the ARR per each code that we have, right? And that's just like giving a dump of customer data. I was able to, rather than me spending the time doing this, like going to those spreadsheets and doing the analysis myself, I could just like hand off a spreadsheet to ChatGPT, get it, and just because I am just trying to answer a few questions. Hey, what are our top 10 segments? What are the top 10 segments, location, industries, geographies that we or the company operate well in, right? And give it a score for each one of them. And so I have now this raw data of, okay, are these like variables which I need to optimize for, right? So now I can create like, okay, this is our TAM. This is the total addressable market that we want to go after. And this is what we're going to distribute into, let's say, 6 equal territories for the sales reps. And then I could say, give that, let's say now the database of existing or the, what do you call it, prospect list, to now figure out, okay, optimize for each one of those factors. And it was a lot of back and forth. It was not, hey, do not spit out one. I just gave the prompt and it just gave a perfect response. It was a lot of back and forth. And eventually, I had to question it quite a bit, break it down into smaller tasks. And then eventually, I would say, I was able to get to a point where I was like, okay, this is these are pretty equal. And it was like, oh, actually, this is one factor which does not make it equal. Can we make this one change? So my point of sharing all this is the fact that, okay, if I was doing all this analysis by myself, or even if I had a team, this was a long, let's say, weeks long projects, right? To do this. Now, with the help of ChatGPT, I was able to like do the whole exercise in a couple of days. Another thing which I kind of learned, which I found interesting in this approach, was not only using ChatGPT, but actually using Claude at the same time as well, and try to compare reasoning. Because if you write a prompt once, sometimes I just paste it in both platforms just to validate each other. And so sometimes I use that as a validation technique that if both of them align, that you're in the right direction.
Key point there. So
Mm.
using it to validate, I love that, and using the different models. And actually, it was a funny. I saw someone had set up to where they kind of interact with each other. So one will say something and the other will come back. So I think for those listening, this is a very important point we should stop on for just a second, which is, you can use different models for different things, and you should, to just validate, if there's differences. And sometimes, they're each better at they're built differently. They're better at different contexts. They're better at different things. Like ChatGPT, really good at, reasoning, really good at data analysis, not as good as at writing or, building out long context or reading long context and providing information back. So there's different reasons to use them. And so what you should do is just use them both, pick 2 or 3 and just use them, copy and paste. And you can see what the different answers are. And so going to the point you just made, though, I think it's, we're in the moment where territories are coming up, or maybe you're looking at reassigning them, and use it as a partner. And I think, again, using it as we kind of just talked about before we discussed this use case, was how do you use it as a person on your team? So brainstorming. So Taimoor mentioned brainstorming. He mentioned data analysis. He mentioned, looking at how you would distribute the territories in a more even manner, so it could do that analysis for you and just go back and forth. And I think again, I know it's a change in the way that we've done things previously, because usually you would do that with a person or a team or something like that. But I think we're in a world where a lot of times you don't have those resources, or a lot of times maybe you don't have the right talent that can help you with that in some situations. And so using ChatGPT to be able to do that is so powerful. So that's a great one. The next one let's talk about is Clay. And I think you do a lot with Clay. They have an agent that's built inside of Clay that does a lot of things. So just tell us, give us a couple of examples of some of the ways that you've used Clay from an AI and an automation standpoint, because I believe you use them for both, and some of the some of the time saving, some of the ROI or whatever that you've been able to give companies for that.
Yeah, so I would say I discovered Clay sometime last year, and for me, it was the aha moment was the fact that I could actually now use AI within my go-to-market motion in a lot of different use cases immediately. And like the fact that it's actually spreadsheet based, the format is a spreadsheet based. And as RevOps, we are trained to actually operate in spreadsheets, right? So it was like
Very true.
And the other thing which I really like about the fact that spreadsheets is the fact it's very transparent, right? So for example, if you have an automation in Salesforce, you don't know like what's actually triggering it in the back end of how does it work. But like with Clay, you actually see it happen right in front of you. So I think that's what it makes it really cool. I guess what I want to share as a small story. So one of the company that I work with, they again when let's say got acquired by a private equity firm last year, went through let's say a round of growth, but not very mature when it comes to processes and automation and generally in the I would say tech stack itself. So that's after the acquisition of PE, the PE came in and they're like, okay, let's start investing in technology and processes. So right now, like when I came in in that company, we had a working student that was doing a lot of manual lead research. So let's say every time a lead came in, it got assigned to a working student. A working student, like it's more of I think a European concept is think of it as an intern or someone who works in college, worked at a company for like 10 to 20 hours a week. And that was the pure sole job that every lead that comes in, go find, the only thing is the domain, go look at the website, go look at their LinkedIn, figure out how many employees they have, figure out, okay, where's the headquarters, fill that all the information into Salesforce, and then assign it if it meets a certain criteria, if it's an MQL, if it's a certain size, then assign to the sales team. So let's say I would have approached this problem maybe a few years ago was like, oh, we need an enrichment tool. Like let's buy, one of the things out in the market and enrich them and assign automatically, right? So that's generally how I would have solved, let's say, this problem last year. But this time around, I think I was like, okay, let's look at Clay and what we were able to do was, what was interesting was actually look at all the work that the working student was doing per lead and say, hey, can we actually now automate this? And not to actually look at different data vendors to say, okay, do we need ZoomInfo or, Lucia and all these things? But hey, the working student was actually going and doing the research online, going on the websites. And can we use that and to do it with Clay? So I think that's where it kind of became really, really interesting and valuable, was we were able to actually replicate almost all the processes, all the things that the working student was doing through Clay. If you want, I can just share my
Oh,
screen
that's
and
great.
show you an example.
Yeah,
Again,
let's
this,
do it.
uh,
We love show and tell.
yeah. Again, I'm not sharing the actual table at the moment, but this is more like a template. The template I built from the original one. Do you see the Clay you see the Clay screen, right?
We do. Yep.
Perfect, right? So again, this is a table, it's a template I have that I built. What I'm gonna do actually, just let's say I'm gonna paste your email address. I wanna put in your name, right? So think of it, let's say a lead comes in from the CRM, you have a lead ID. Firstly, what it did right here is just a formula. It basically took your email address, then looked at, oh, okay, what's the domain? Did I get that right, by the way?
You did. Yep. That's it.
Yeah, so it's just put it out. This one's trying to figure out, hey, is this actually a personal email? Or so yeah, it's basic marks, hey, if it's a personal email or not. If it's a personal email, if it's Gmail or Hotmail, it just ignores it. And then you have it do, let's say, a bunch of steps. Over here, you can see, so I have a Clay agent, which I've it's a very simple prompt. I can maybe just show you the prompt. I'm using GPT-4 Mini. I'm like, hey, find the person job title based on the following information. I know the domain, first name, last name, company, email, and return only with the job title, right? So that's a simple prompt I've written. And what you can do see is like, it kind of shows you the steps it took. Hey, I firstly said, hey, I went on Google, search your name. And it ended over here and find your title. And then also give you a confidence level. Okay, it thinks it's, hey, it got the answer right, and has a reasoning of why that's the why I think this is interesting, especially when it comes to confidence. I can actually build a logic of, hey, if the confidence is low, if the agent thinks that, hey, it don't think I have the right answer, so I can now trigger it to run something else. So in the same way, what I think over here, I have Apollo, which I think the condition I've put in is only run if the confidence level is not high or very high. Right?
Makes sense. Yeah. So if it's high, you don't need to.
Yeah,
If it's low, try to use a different source to see if you can find the information.
exactly, right? And then, so it basically now puts it over here. Again, this is for a particular company, and what I build is like personas and map it to certain personas. So, and what over here, the next little, let's say, prompts is just basic. What you'll pay a data provider for is, hey, get basic information about the company, right? And it's basically now doing the research, company name, put your address, postal code, phone number, everything that exists online. Right. So it comes like, so the agent actually, so just to, if I can break it down a little bit, it comes back and gives you a result in a certain format. And then I have a little extra, let's say, formula, like a clear formula that I can just say, pass that information using a regex pattern. Again, if you ask me, what is this? I don't know, because I just use ChatGPT to get that formula to actually take the address out from the prompt it came from the output of the research. Again, this is
Okay.
like a perfect use case of where you need to use ChatGPT as a partner, because I was actually showing this to someone, and like this, my friend who actually went and studied computer science. He's like, hey, I studied this in school. I was like, oh, okay, great. I actually had no idea what it is, but now I can do it, right? Because I asked
Now you can do
ChatGPT,
it.
hey, just, yeah. Right.
So again, for everyone watching, if you're stuck somewhere, use ChatGPT as your partner to help you get unstuck. Ask them the questions, and
Yes.
they can use he or she, depending on how you set it up, can
Mhm.
typically give you a response and an answer. So
Again, so this is just like basic enrichment table. It's basically going and finding, understanding which NAICS code does it belong to, like understanding the industry. So it probably went and say, okay, took a few steps, came back and say, hey, I believe the NAICS code should be uh, Q86, and gives you a reason, confidence level is high. This I built for a particular client, and I actually have an ICP score, which is a similar to a lead score. And what I've trained, I just written a prompt that, hey, these are the few industries next score that the company is
mm,
performs well in. And again, this was the analysis I was talking about earlier of, hey,
yeah,
these are a few industries where the company does well in, and give it a score based on that, right? And came back, okay, yeah, it's a 75. Why it's a 75 is because company size is around 502,000. Princeton, yeah. So the company this is for is they do compliance training. So it's like, hey, industry-wise might be a good
it
fit.
is.
Hmm.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
score is so important. I mean, a lot of people don't talk about, they talk about lead score, opportunity score, but going back to one of the comments that we made at the very beginning, which is around profitable and efficient growth, it's super important to have an ICP, understand your ICP. You can use ChatGPT. If you don't understand it, you can use, just like you did, understand what are the highest performing
Mhm.
companies, what are the characteristics of them, and how can you use those to build an ICP score that you're now using AI to help you, AI and automation to help you get that score for every company in an automated fashion. So I love that, because that ICP is so critical today. So thanks for
And
yeah, go ahead.
and I think like one point over there here I would like to make is that it does not have to be perfect, right? I think
Yeah.
in a lot of companies I've had a lot of conversation where just they get stuck on like, hey, we need to define our we need to run this project around defining who the ICP is, and just uh, like spend months just figure out who the ICP is, and does not have to be perfect, right? Like look at the existing data that you have in the system and then try to figure out, okay, where do you, as long as it's directionally correct, you need a method to actually score good from bad and like help your reps actually prioritize and work on the right leads, right? And that's the end goal. So yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, maybe I mean, I probably don't want to go spend much more time, but like a lot of things you can do,
yeah.
like with Clay, there is like just doing specific research, right? So for example, like, hey, I am looking for, go read their compliance documents or read their annual report and find for
Mm.
these certain points, and which might be a good indicator that for your company, right? So you can build a lot of signals around that. So
Love it. Absolutely. Okay, we got one more thing. We're running a lot of time, so I would love to
yeah.
hear just your perspective on this last one you talked about that I think you just did. And so it was, one of the challenges that people have, especially with Salesforce and really your
Mm.
CRM, is building out round robin lead assignments.
Mm.
And you're having to use a tool to do it, lean data or some tool. But you actually utilized O1, which for those that are listening, if you don't know what O1 is the new chat GPT model that just came out. It's in preview, so we'll see kind of when the full version, but it is really good at reasoning. And this is taking the models to a whole nother level with the ability to reason. And so walk us through kind of what you did using O1 to do round robins with Google Sheets, I believe.
Yeah, and I think this is like one of those cases where I'm like, do we really need a new tool to actually solve for this one use case? And initially I was like, okay, how can we figure out to do it in Google Sheets and Clay, right? Because Clay, one of the cool things is you can actually look up Google spreadsheets and find answers from that, right? So, and I was trying to figure out, hey, can we do that? So, and kind of came down to, so just a little background about the requirement. The company that I was building this for, they want equal, not equal, but round robin based on which aligns with the targets of each individual reps, right? Because they have reps at different levels, so they want, like A tier, B tier, and C tier distributed in the same proportion to their targets, so that
Oh,
they have
interesting.
the equal chance of hitting
Their
their
goals.
target. It's not equal, so it's aligned with their. So I don't know how to, like, if I'd spent enough time in Salesforce to build it out, I could have, but I thought, okay, I know how to do it in Google Sheet, just build that formula out. But to automate that, that's where I was like, okay, this is challenging. And so yes, actually I was doing this last night. I used O1 preview for the first time. And what I found really interesting was my interaction felt like the same way as if it was teaching me, right? So every time
Oh,
I like, hey, this is what I want to do. And it kind of like criticize, like, hey, think of these areas as well. Have you thought about that? And then give me suggestions of, hey, this is like one thing you can try, this is the other thing you can try. And also these uh uh yeah, gave those other alternatives as well. So every solution, like, and then it was a lot of back and forth that I had, but it was generally driven by uh reasoning, but also alternatives. So, but at the same time, what I felt was every answer it was literally a book. I asked one question and gave me
gave
back
you.
like five pages, which was great content, like, which is like, but it kind of gave so much reasoning of why it says this is the right way. It gave me a formula. Hey, this is a formula that you can use in Google Sheets to do this. And I was like, and why, and explain it step by step. So it was just like beautiful just to see of, the reasoning. And I felt yesterday I learned something. I learned, so I do feel this is a new way of learning probably, which is using like O1 preview on your projects. And it kind of teaches you of how you can approach. So I felt much more, let's say, confident and like much more, I felt like I learned something. So
No, I think that, and that's very
Mhm.
important too. And it even walks you through step by step of how
Yeah.
it thought about the problem and solution and kind of what it's thinking. And so you're exactly right. It's a whole nother level of
Mhm.
utilizing AI in a certain way and helping you. So, um,
At the same time, I do want to, let's just say, so yesterday I said like, okay, I felt like I learned something, but a lot of time, especially with Salesforce, which I have this like, GPT where I just say, hey, write me a formula for this, write me a formula, then just copy paste. Sometimes I feel like I'm losing a part of my brain, which I used to, let's say, which used to be active doing those like, uh, solving those problems. I feel like I'm not activating that much. So that's just a random thought I had. It's the same way like people felt like when they start using calculators, they're not good at mental math. But yeah.
yeah, that's so true and important. But ultimately, for those that don't know how to do it, right, or
Mm.
haven't learned it, it's such a great tool to use. I mean, I was stuck on a specific Excel formula just 2 days ago. And I was like, man, I don't know how to do this one. And I was like, oh, well, I probably know someone who does. So just pulled up my shortcut desktop, asked it the question, got it. Bam, it worked perfectly. So yeah, so I think again, there's so many different things in your day to day. Just if you're stuck, or if you're trying to brainstorm, if you're doing research, if you want data analysis. I mean, there's just so many different ways that you can use AI, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, whoever, whatever you want to use, in many different ways to help you. As again, think of it as your digital team, a part of your team, your assistant, et cetera. So, well, man, thanks for dropping all the knowledge bombs today. I know I'm smarter because I had this with you today. So I appreciate you taking the time to come out and share this with everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure. Again, I know we're going to keep talking, and I'm going to see you here pretty soon, right? In a couple of weeks. So I'm excited about that as well.
Yes, looking forward to seeing you in person. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun, so much fun. I can talk about for these things for hours. So
Same, exactly. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. This has been another episode of GTM AI podcast with my great friend Taimoor. So again, thanks for the time. Hope you all learned a lot because he dropped some knowledge bombs. Have a great day. Cheers.